Dear Jan and audience, have you ever asked yourself the question, what type of pre-sales person you would like to be? You have on the one side maybe the casual 9 to 5 person who's just doing the day, doing the things that he's being told. And then on the other side, you have someone who is trying to excel in the profession, seeking fulfillment and growth. My name is Tim.
And I'm Jan, and together we are Sales Excellence.
This is your podcast for software B2B sales and pre-sales.
We still believe in a strategic, value-based, and customer-centric sales approach.
With our knowledge and experience, we would like to help you find new inspiration and more success in your daily sales lives. And with that being said, welcome to a new episode of the Sales Excellence podcast, dear listeners.
Yeah, welcome also from my side. And Tim, I ask that question myself every day, I would say, and that is the stuff we would like to talk about today a little bit. So what we see a lot, or what we have seen a lot in the past, is people in pre-sales with a lot of potential, right? But maybe not the right environment in respect of inspiration, feedback culture, and questioning the status quo. And that's the reason of today's episode. And of course, we have invited again a very, very interesting guest.
We do indeed. Thank you, Jan. And I mean, as you've already noticed, potentially this is very much going to be a mindset episode, right? So, and in that sense, I'm very happy to announce our guest, James Kaikis here. James is a senior manager at Salesforce, and he is there leading a growing SE team in the manufacturing vertical, in fact. Yeah. And previously, James spent some time at other known companies such as Showpad, where he was the first SE and built the global SE organization. Very nice. He's also the founder, which is going to be a topic for today, the founder of the PreSales Collective, right, which is the first global community for our profession. And I hope you guys agree that there's very little out there. So both Jan and myself are very happy that there is something now. And also he's the founder of the Chicago PreSales Community. And with that being said, hello, James. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Tim, Jan. What an intro. That was great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No worries at all. And maybe out of curiosity, I mean, it's early afternoon here in Germany and we're recording this episode. And obviously you're based in the States. What time is it?
It is 7:30 in the morning here in Chicago.
Oh, right. That is
bright and early. It's a beautiful day. This is a good way to start the day. That's what I'm excited about.
That's something I learned when working with people from the US. You guys are always early up.
I was up at 5 today. I was so excited for this podcast that I got up early and prepared.
I can imagine. So in that respect, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I realized that early in your career you also worked in hospitality. And an interesting question to me is basically, how does that assist you as a sales engineer today?
That is a great question. And you only, as an SE, I have a rule, you're only allowed to say great question one time. So I just used it on the first one.
Fair enough.
It's crossed off.
It's crossed off. It's good. That was a good one, though. I think for me, I have a history of leaving really amazing jobs. So I had some life situations happen. I moved to Hawaii, and that's where my daughter was born. And I used to work in operations, in athletic operations, and I couldn't really find a job. And I ended up falling into a hospitality job and actually created a VIP program. I created a program for people to come to Hawaii and have a great experience. And it was amazing. I literally wore an Aloha shirt and worked on one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. I learned a lot about customers, about expectations, under promising and over delivering. And so I think that's where I really learned a customer centric approach. I was the first communication from the hotel. I was the first person they saw when they showed up to the hotel, and we talked throughout the hotel stay. And I realized that I could really make or break a difference in terms of their hotel loyalty. And so for me, I learned a lot about customer experience. I always say that I turned into a customer-centric problem solver. And I think that is a term that has continued to carry with me in my career. One of the things that I learned in hospitality is that things are always going to go wrong. no matter how much you prepare for them. But it's about how you follow up and how you deliver on that is really what makes or breaks. And I think making quality experience and making people who maybe save up their money for years and years and make one trip to Hawaii, and I can help make it memorable, really just taught me a lot about people. It really, really did. And it's a very worthwhile experience in terms of where I've gotten to in terms of how I handle sales today.
Yeah, that's a good anecdote, I think. And it reminds me, I just finished reading a book. I don't know the author's name, but I do remember the name of the book, and I'll link it in the show notes. The book is called Range, where the author is basically talking about, do you have it in yourself? You're looking to the left.
I literally looked over to the side. I'd see if I can grab it real quick. I do have that book. It's a great book.
Because, yes, it is a great book. And it's speaking exactly to your point, right? Where he's talking about how experiences in other professions and other sports, and I think he's also talking about music a lot, can result in a better experience or better performance in the field that you're actually active in. And I mean, hospitality is probably relatively far away from pre-sales on first sight, but all the examples that you just gave prove that there's still something to be learned there.
Yeah, and that's David Epstein, and he did a couple of sports books previously, and his whole thing is about specialization versus generalization. So if you look at like Roger Federer versus Tiger Woods and how they've come up, it's very interesting that they reached the pinnacle of their performance, and there's not one necessarily track. So yeah, in my opinion, it's all about transferable skills. I never intended to work in hospitality, right? I never intended to get into software like I did, and it's all just kind of flowed together. And I think that's what makes us all who we are, is we have our different backgrounds, our different experiences, and we apply them to, our day-to-day jobs now.
I like it a lot because, as you said, maybe at the first look, there is no natural connection, but I think there is a lot of connection, especially what you said, customer centricity, and really think about what do I need to do to make it memorable, to make it a great experience, to help them, all that stuff. And I know another person, greetings to Mark, who worked in hospitality early in his career, and you can still see that he's benefiting from it. So he's in sales, not in pre-sales, but you still see that. So I like it a lot, and I really like your Hawaii story.
I'm telling you, I have a history of leaving really great jobs. I don't know what it is, but I literally wore an Aloha shirt, and I still have the view in my head of like my office view on the beach. It was amazing. It was stunning.
And maybe at some day you will go back to Hawaii.
I would love that. I would love that. I would like to live in multiple cities. That's the dream right there.
So let's bring it a little bit to the pre-sale side. So coming from your experience with hospitality, so what is pre-sales for you really, and why does your heart beat for pre-sales?
Yeah, I think for me, I fell into a pre-sales role like many people. Pre-sales to me is again, that customer-centric problem solving. Someone has a problem, they have a pain, and they're looking for something to solve it. And many times we think it's technology, but technology is only a part of that, right? I think if you listen to the book Good to Great, there's multiple components of how you get there. And I think for me, taking a step back, I fell into this role. So I worked in hospitality. I went to a hospitality technology company where I was one of the first post-sale hires. So I helped start a post-sale team, and I worked with hospitality vendors. And I learned the product set and the competitive market so well that they would bring me on calls in the beginning. And I would get on with these customers, and I would do proof of concepts. And I was like, wow, I am literally talking to some of the best hotel chains in the world that have a current solution, have a current problem, and I'm helping them fix it and showing them what their life would look like with our technology, with the change management. And to me, I loved it. I I hate to say this on the podcast, but I used to be in post-sale where we had some, at times challenges in the technology. So I would say sales sold the dream and I had to onboard the nightmare, right? And it wasn't that bad, but I realized that was like why I wanted to kind of go to the pre-sale side, because I knew what it took on the post-sale side. I knew what it took to implement, and that's how I'd move forward. I think for me, I love a good challenge. I really love having a problem and trying to fix it and getting creative. I can't say I'm the most creative person when it comes to drawing, but when it comes to trying to figure out how to solve problems, it's just something that I really love. And I really love the growth mindset of this role, because you're always learning, you're always evolving. Every time you think you have it down, there's something new to do. There's something new to learn. And that's why I really love pre-sales.
Right. So thinking outside the box is something I hear with my words here. Good stuff. I like it a lot. So Tim already mentioned during the introduction that you founded a lot of communities for pre-sales. So what happened, right? There are two, a kind of local community in your hometown, Chicago, and then Presales Collective.
Yeah. So for me, when I left Revenate and went to Showpad, I was the first pre-sales hire that they had. And I was reporting to a VP of sales, ended up reporting to a CRO. But a funny thing about that experience is I never had a pre-sales manager in my entire career until I just came to Salesforce. Last year, I have always reported to a president or a CRO or a founder. And so for me, I needed to find mentors and people in my network that would help me develop this program, because it was the kind of the blind leading the blind. Like I knew what I was doing from an individual contributor's perspective, but growing and building a team was much different. And so I got involved in San Francisco's local sales engineering community, which is a really great community, fantastic people. It's very active. I mean, I went to an event, there was 150 people there. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I made a lot of friends. I learned a lot and I found mentors. And those people helped me build, what we did as a team at Showpad over those 4.5 years. And when Showpad asked me to move to Chicago, because we opened up headquarters, I realized that there was no community there. The tech scene was growing. It wasn't San Francisco. So I thought it was a good opportunity. And when I got to Chicago, I started this group called the Chicago PreSales Community. And that group has turned into, we have a founding council of like 4 or 5 people that we help put on events. We've had 40, 50, 60 people showing up to our events. And what I realized is, wow, people really need this community. People really want an opportunity to talk to like-minded people, to make friends in the industry, talk about problems. Because, I would say a lot of our own companies don't necessarily have the ecosystem for us. We develop a lot for sales or BDRs, but not necessarily for the pre-sales folks or the SEs, SCs. And when I saw the community, I was so happy and so, just enamored by the reception that I realized if you don't have a local community in your city, where do you go? There's still nowhere to go. And then if you look at like all these amazing communities that exist for sales leaders, sales executives, AEs, BDRs, there's nothing for us, right? There's nothing for our profession. And so that is where the Presales Collective started. Yuji Higashi and I have been friends for some years. We both were building scaling teams. And we said, hey, let's take away the idea that if you don't have a local community, you can't connect with other people. Let's do something online. Let's build this global community. And here we are, a couple months in, it's been an amazing experience.
I mean, in regards to some of the numbers that you just mentioned, right? You said, okay, in Chicago, in the pre-sales community, sometimes 50, 60 people show up. I think this shows us here also in the German market what type of potential we still have, because we have here in Munich, we have plenty of software sales events and marketing events. These things do happen, but they are much broader in the scope of roles that they accommodate for. So it's not just pre-sales, it's also pre-sales, but much more. And they have maybe a turn up of like 50, 60 people. So yeah, I think it's also the mindset, and this is really the topic of this episode, right? It's a mindset in the person, him or herself, where a trigger needs to be switched. Okay, I'm actually looking actively for these type of people because I want to integrate into the community. I want to learn something from others, not only from my colleagues, or maybe even have colleagues, just in your case where you had 0 colleagues literally, and only a manager who wasn't even a pre-sales manager, but a sales manager. So that's really a switch in someone's mind that needs to turn before you actually actively start looking. And I think there's still a lot of potential to even utilize those type of forums even more, especially also here in Germany, I think.
And I think what I've realized is people want the focus, right? Like there's communities for go-to-market, there's communities for sales, but they want the focus and they want to talk about the similar problems that we face in a day-to-day. And once you kind of, go down that route, you realize that there's a very strong market for people who want to do this. And it is really refreshing. It's actually been a very joyful experience to hear people saying, wow, this is great. I've always wanted this. I've needed this. I've been looking for this. That's what this is all about.
And I think it's interesting to talk about your motivation, or finally your personal why, right, for doing that. I think you already did with what you said. But is there anything you would like to add in respect of why you did that? Why you take all that time and investment from your end, starting off that kind of community?
I think the larger group in general is like, we as pre-sales folks, like we don't like reinventing the wheel all the time, right? You have a demo or a demo org that you have to customize. You typically have maybe 50 to 60% of it done, right? And when you think about people that are building pre-sales organizations, people that are defining their roles, most companies are starting from scratch. And you're getting on LinkedIn or you're getting on a Medium and messaging a few people. So we want to be able to create a place where all those learnings, all those best practices, those things are shared. You can find like-minded people that want to talk through this problem. They've been through this solution. You can easily, find individuals that you can bounce ideas off that are at different companies. Like that is really important from my perspective. And I think when I look back at my career, again, I've had a very diverse career. I used to coach youth sports, and a lot of my life, even from an early age, I always coached youth sports. And I saw how much it meant to those kids to be there every day, helping them, coaching them, training them. And, years later, they would come back and be super thankful, and they would remember a conversation. I actually worked in the inner cities of Las Vegas for 4 years coaching youth. And, the stories that I have of some of those kids is just unbelievable, right? And I think for me, helping others is a massive motivation. It's something that really gets me going. It's something that at the end of the day, like I want a legacy or reputation of helping others. They always say people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I think at the end of the day, like that is part of this motivation that's driving me to have 2 full-time jobs at this point. It's really fun. It really is. And the messages and the outreach and the connecting of people is so fulfilling. It's worth the effort to get this going.
Got it. And I like it. I like it because to me, it sounds like, okay, there is that kind of higher goal, right? For yourself. And in that respect, is there any kind of bigger goal for the community itself?
Ooh, where do I start? No, I'm just kidding. I think for me, if I had to distill it down simply, it's just if you're a pre-sales professional, Presales Collective is the place you go to. That's it, right? And what you could go there for can be a multitude and magnitude of items. But if you're in pre-sales, that is the go-to community, no matter where you are in the world. And I think you guys know this. We've talked a little bit about this offline. We want to be a global pre-sales community. And what that means is that we can't be, a couple people in the US building out webinars and blog content and a Slack channel that is only US focused. We have to be global. We have to have a global focus. We need to have a global footprint. And I think that is what our profession will appreciate. And we look down the road 5 or 10 years from now, it's like, wow, Presales Collective really helped elevate the brand. It helped elevate our profession. It helped us connect local and like-minded people. Like, that is what it's all about. And I just don't think you should be at the mercy of your own organization to support you. We just haven't seen it, right? We haven't seen organizations develop the time, energy, and effort into pre-sales folks. It just isn't happening right now. So many times they say, oh, well, those are the smart people, they'll figure it out. Like that's unacceptable, right? Like long-term, that's totally unacceptable. And I appreciate that. Like, makes me want to give me a pat on the back, but it doesn't help me do my job. And with the expansion of technology and how technology is part of our day-to-day lives and things will get more and more complicated, our role becomes more and more important and more critical to organizational success. And that's full customer lifecycle. That is not just pre-sales, it's post-sales, it's upsell. It's in that whole journey. And that's, again, why we want to help be that place to help those people be better at their job, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, that strongly resonates also with me, what you just said. I mean, we put it as being at the mercy of your organization, right? But also you said in an earlier sentence that sometimes there isn't even any infrastructure in place. And I've certainly been there. I mean, I've been in large organizations where you have like pre-sales enablement, but that is more the exception than the norm, I would almost say. I've been in other roles where there was basically nothing. I had a colleague mentor, and but he was also just doing what he thought was right. So there's no like best practices or further formal enablement in that sense. And that is also the case. And I think we discussed this in one of the other podcast episodes as well, that even if you want to say, I want to go into that profession, like what type of university do you go to? What type of education do you get, right? I mean, I'm a heavy engineer, but I'm also very interested in economics. So it works, right? Because you always have these business aspects and you have technology aspects, but there's not really anything that you can go for university to learn the skills that you need, because it is just relatively broad, right? Just emphasizing the need to learn just that bit more to be good at it.
Yeah. I would 100% agree. I mean, Tim, you said so some companies, they have enablement teams or whatever, right? But my experience is also they are great, right? But the enablement is more in respect of products and solutions and technology, and maybe not in respect of soft skills and that shaping the mindset and getting to that level of dedication and have a good understanding how to do great in that role. A lot of stuff is maybe coming from external companies. I mean, I had that experience also with Salesforce, James, the Demo to Win, stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but I think, as you said, always missing that kind of community piece, right? So where's that place where we as pre-sales people can go to and meet people they really understand us? I like it a lot, and I completely committed to your goal. And as you said, I think we are glad to support your initiative because until we met you, we really thought it's only like that in Germany, right? So no place to go for pre-sales people, not a lot of assets and content. That was one of the reasons why we started that podcast. But then talking to more people, we're basically realizing it's the same situation all over the globe. So let's join forces and do something helpful for the community. All right. So in respect of community, and you mentioned, hey, you guys doing webinars, you're writing articles, you're having the Slack channels, all that stuff. So what is it really for you? What drives the content you're coming up with?
Yeah, I think we're really trying to continue to evolve, right? We had an idea, we had a strategy around where we would lead with content, right? For example, when we started Presales Collective, and really still for the majority of the beginning, is we're only publishing this on LinkedIn. We're only posting thoughts on LinkedIn, using a hashtag, giving some opinions. Someone like Don Carmichael does a great job. Tips by Don Carmichael as a hashtag has gained a massive following, right? And for us, we realized that was a really powerful medium, but you also need to support it with blog content. And then I think the webinars have been a great medium for people to hear from other people in the community that they might not ordinarily hear from, with a number of different topics. The idea of the Slack channel allows us to connect people in a different way, right? We didn't want to always be one-way communication. We wanted to figure out a way to do two-way communication. So even that with the Slack channel, we have mentorship programs, we have virtual coffee programs to connect people. I think that's really important. Podcast for us allows us, just like this, to go deeper with people, to get more personal. And those are like the main pillars of what we're looking to do, including a newsletter, right? To help be a vehicle to drive to that traffic. How I've looked at this is like from a target audience perspective, there's about 4 sections right now. It's pre-sales awareness. That could be anyone who's interested in getting into pre-sales. They just want to know what we do. There's the individual contributor, right? And even individual contributor is broken into beginners versus, veterans. There's leaders, and then there's executive leaders, right? People who are running 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people orgs. Different content caters to different audiences. And I think for us right now, we're just trying to put all of it in one place. And that is the main focus. We now have the target audience and just trying to give back to the community, right? Like hearing from like-minded people has been really nice. It's been really great. A webinar, just like the one that you guys did, could be more of a presentation, but it also could be a roundtable around, certain topic or a theme. And so, we're seeing success across, and it also does depend on geographics and it does depend on regions. So I think for us, we want to empower the community as well. There have been so many great people who've done this for quite some time, right? I always think of, John Kerr, Peter Cohen, those are guys, Bob Reinsfeld, Demo to Win. Those guys have started this built networks, built a career, and now there are more people who want to get involved, more faces, more voices. And I think that's what we're trying to be a vehicle to do, is to, raise awareness for all these other amazing professionals that have been doing this too, and get their voices, get their opinions, get their ideas out there so people can hear that and hear their name. That, it's the term, rising tide floats all boats. And I appreciate everyone who's, the Peters, the Don Carmichaels, the Johns, the Bobs who've done this before us and helped put us there. And again, not limited to that group, but there are so many other people that are out there that we want to help be a vehicle to drive. And so that's kind of like the content strategy, the medium strategy, and the idea of the voices of the community.
I like that. So you have a clear kind of structure and plan, but you are flexible and open-minded. And what I hear is also the community can drive the content, right? So if there is something coming up, they can raise it with you and you can make it a topic easily for an upcoming webinar or whatever it will be.
Yeah. One topic that I'm extremely excited about in discovering going forward is, and you keep on mentioning it, right? The idea is to make it a global community, but also respecting that there's regional differences. And I think, between me and my German colleagues, we always philosophize around this. Okay, what's the difference between how an American would approach a sales meeting versus how a German would approach a sales meeting? Right. And also not only how we approach it, but also how it's received on the other end. What even happens when you have mixed audiences, right? Maybe you have some American audiences together with German audiences. You have that sometimes. And how does that influence the way you apply the best practices and strategies and methodologies that are obviously the topics that we talk about a lot in these communities. Yeah, so that is going to be an exciting one.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And I think one of the things to bring up as well is in the US, we really focused on like 11 a.m. Pacific time as a time to do webinars because it's right around lunch for most of the regions. I've talked to some people, for instance, I've been talking to a number of people in India, and they have mentioned that they want to do webinars on Saturdays. And in the US, if I try to do a webinar on Saturday, I don't think I'm going to have anybody show up, right? And then I've talked to, other people in different regions, and they're like, yes, people typically like the morning, or they typically like right after work. And it is very interesting to do that and see that. And I think one thing to highlight about my past experience, and I'm very fortunate to have, when I worked at Revenate, I did all the onboarding for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I would go to Amsterdam, work in our office, help with the clients there. So I really got that base. And then at Showpad, we're a Belgium-based company, right? So I was in Belgium a couple times a year. And so beyond Salesforce, my entire tech career has been centered around European and broad engagement. I think that has helped open my perspective that it is not one size fits all. And Jan, to your point earlier, we need to be nimble. We need to be able to adjust. We need to be able to do what's best for the community. And if you keep that in mind, it allows you to execute properly.
And that is related back to your career on Hawaii, because you're putting your customers or your community members in the middle of what you're doing. So yeah, I see that line from the beginning to the end. Okie dokie. So a question I ask myself a lot, and I don't expect that you have the full answer to it, but why do we have so little content for pre-sales compared to sales?
I would use the good question for this one as well. If I still had that in my bag, cross it off. Maybe I erase it and then I bring it back. I just think it's the nature of sales traditionally over the past 15 to 20 years, right? Maybe even past 30 years. Technology has been growing. It's always existed, but sales processes are different, right? And I think it's just the traditional and the norm, and it's the routine that we've been used to is, you have sellers, and sellers need to get trained, and they need education, and they programs. And typically throughout organizations, CROs, CSOs, whoever they might be, come from sales organizations. The sales engineering role, I don't even know where it actually originated from. I have some thoughts in my head, but I think we need to figure out what the truth is. But part of me thinks it was a product manager that came on a sales call and needed to help explain some things. And then they realized, hey, this is a really good idea. We should build this role. And it's grown and grown and grown. But again, with the advances of technology in the past, 10 years, even the last 5 years, how many tech companies exist out there? This role has just grown and become more and more important. I think something to see would be really interesting from data. I love using data to drives my decisions, is like pre-sales roles or postings, job postings over the past 20 years, right? Or how many people on LinkedIn have that title. I think we've actually seen that with sales enablement. You guys mentioned sales enablement earlier. I think sales enablement is maybe 3 or 4, 5 years ahead of what we want to be, right? Where they're starting to get more teams, they're getting more headcount, they're getting a seat at the table. And I think we as pre-sales professionals will continue to go there. But I think it's just how things have been, right? It's just how things have been. And it takes an initiative like Presales Collective and the community rallying behind it to change status quo, because that is a hard thing to do. And it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's what we're trying to do here.
I like it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you.
It's a good theory with a product manager, and it would be interesting to explore it. In my mind, it could also reside somewhere in like high tech manufacturing, right? If you have a propulsion jet manufacturer or something where you have really high complex products that certainly need explanation from someone who knows their stuff. And I mean, in German we have this job title which is called Vertriebsingenieur, which is almost like a direct translation, but it's still, I think, something different because it's not really associated to software, but more to like high-tech engineering types of verticals. So I think they had this role for a lot longer, but also there, I think it's less business inclined and more technology inclined. And in our case, when we talk about software, I think you also need a good portion of business understanding in order to be good at what you do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it's just doing a demo.
Oh no! Don't get me started.
Jan, it's all about demo.
as always. Okie dokie, got it. So, I mean, what is the reception so far with the community stuff?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It's exciting. I joke that I now have 2 full-time jobs, so I'm working around the clock at this point. But again, it's actually the reception and the notes and the feedback that drives me to continue to work like this. And again, it's not just me, it's UG. There's plenty of other people who are involved in this, but I think that the reception is what's driving us to continue to go and to move. And there's so many people out there that have been like, oh, I was looking for something like this and I couldn't find it. And it's just so funny that you reached out to me about this. Or so many people be like, I have so many ideas and I've been looking for a way to get them out to the community. And a couple people, even like global pre-sales leaders, have telling me like, I have a great brand within my company and I have so many ideas, and people, occasionally give me calls, but I don't have a vehicle to put my ideas out there to the masses. And it's been great. It's been a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it really is gratifying.
Yeah. And I mean, I never believed that you are joking. So I truly believe that you have 2 full-time jobs at the moment. And I'm
actually closing a deal right now. I'm actually just doing a demo at the same time.
And I'm still impressed about your motivation and drive because I can imagine how much effort and emotions you really need to put into that. And so I'm glad to hear that the reception is really, really good, and people are thankful to see that kind of initiative. So maybe to close the loop with the community piece, what are your learnings so far? I mean, you just started, right? Couple of months ago, but what have you learned so far?
Yeah, I've learned that if you do too many things and don't do them well, it's not going to resonate. I actually will reflect on my own experiences in startups. I really love startups. I thought I did well in that type of environment, but I lacked focus a lot of times. I always like to say that I ebbed and flowed as a manager. Sometimes I was a really good manager. Sometimes I wasn't. My focus was all over the place. And when we rolled out Presales Collective, I was very clear that execution was key. And being able to do things at a very high caliber is very noticeable, right? People can tell when there's been time, energy, and effort put into things, just like sales calls. I'm very, very particular about the prep that goes into our calls and the planning, because a well-articulated value proposition can help a bad demo, right? It can, right? And if you think about that same type of experience with this, execution's just been key. making sure that we're preparing, and the people that are putting their time and energy, coming to our webinars, reading our blogs, listening to our podcast, we owe it to them to do a good job. And I think that has been my biggest key. And I think the one thing to notice is when this whole COVID situation, everyone went to pandemic, or changed their approach during the pandemic, we started to see a flood of webinars, mediums, video content. But I will tell you, you could really see the difference between people who've put the energy into it versus not. And if your execution's not there and you don't hold yourself to a high standard, people are not going to follow up. They're not going to attend, and you're going to lose your audience. And you're going to spend so much time trying to get that audience back that you put yourself behind. And so if you put execution in the middle of all of this, as the current learning, I think that to me has been the most important aspect of this whole journey.
I like the aspect with focusing on the important stuff, right? Instead of just trying to balance a lot of different things. All right, so let's close the part talking about the community, which I really enjoyed, by the way. And let's step into another area where it's maybe a little bit more about you and your team you run at Salesforce today. So how do you and your team go beyond normal? Because as we just heard, we need to do that, right? To really get the deals closed, to really get engaging, to keep the audience attending future sessions and all that stuff.
Yeah, I live by a quote that is, the details are the difference between good and great. I think from playing sports, and when I look at professional sports, the differences in wins and losses are just so minimal, right? They really are. In professional football, American football, a quarterback who's, throwing the ball, 40, 50 times a game, they throw one or two interceptions that can change the entire game, right? And if you look at their statistics, people highlight that. So it just shows that it's just those finite details. And I think even in sales conversations, in demos and discos, whatever it is, those differences really make or break a customer experience, and you really need to put the customer at the focal point. I think for me, I am never okay with status quo. It's a good and bad thing in my life and in my career. I always think that we can be constantly learning, and I always think we can be growing. The number one thing that gets me upset is someone who's been in role for quite some time who's like, I got it down. I know everything. Well, your buyers change. The market changes. Customer expectations change. And they're the ones who dictate what success looks like. And so if you're not tailoring and changing your approach, you're falling behind. And I firmly believe that. And I don't care if you've been in the role for 5 years, for 10 years, for 25 years. You need to have that mindset that you have to cater to your customers, to your audience, and grow through that perspective.
Yeah, and I like that a lot. So from time to time, I ask people, who's paying your salary, right? And the normal answer is like, my company, right? And I'm always like, no, it's not your company. It's always the customers of your company. And if you lose track with your customers, you will run into an issue. Your company will run into an issue. So I can completely follow what you said.
I'm going to start using that. I actually really love that. That's great.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it, right? I mean, you basically say, if we use the term pre-sales golden standard, which is where we all would like to be, it's a moving target, right? It's not a static point where you will be at some point, but it's always changing, as you pointed out, James. Buyer circles are changing, buying personas are changing, buying processes are changing. Never mind that they are different by company in any case. So that plays into it as well. And one other thing I wanted to raise, and talking about regional differences, right? And you used the sports analogy, which Jan and myself also use a lot. However, American football might be a bit tricky. Funny enough, actually, just a couple of months ago, I watched my full American football game start to finish, and I had some colleagues who took the time patiently to explain the rules to me. So I do understand a bit better now. That being said, I think also a great comparison is what we always use, Jan, right? The sprinter analogy. You have like Usain Bolt, Olympic Games, I don't know, just under 10 seconds. And then there's another guy who's just a 10th of a second or 100th of a second slower, right? So the difference between gold and silver medal is so minimal. But the fact, as the name indicates, the silver medal is still a silver medal, whereas in sales, you don't get the deal.
There's nothing.
That's really the important piece. Yeah.
Good.
2% factor. That's the keyword.
Yeah, that's the keyword. Thanks to the Demo to Win guys again.
Bob, if you're listening, we're all big fans of Demo to Win.
Yeah, 100%. James, now we come to the question Tim is waiting for the last 45 minutes. Tim,
I love that.
The stage is yours.
So I've changed pre-sales roles a couple of times now. So I've been seeing different organizations with a very different approach for the portfolio, right? I mean, I was at SAP, for example, and I think it's no secret to say that SAP, of course, has a very broad product portfolio, which means the sales and the pre-sales organization is challenged with being still able to cater for these very individual solutions that are part of the portfolio and still be an expert in front of the customer. Then I've seen other organizations, for example, the one that I'm in right now, we're very specific. We're providing a very niche solution. So everyone in the company can talk about it upside down around the same topic. To put it into a question, when you are working at a company such as Salesforce or such as SAP, and I'm assuming some of our listeners may be working for Microsoft, Oracle, and so on, you always have that challenge, broad portfolio, but still being on eye-to-eye level with your persona counterparts on the buyer side in order to have the conversation in a proper manner. Have you seen that challenge, for example, at Salesforce or in other companies before, and how do you tackle it?
That is a tough question. And I love that question. I'm glad we saved that one for last. My thought is, I have similar experiences like you. When I was at Revenate and Showpad, it was a little bit more of a niche product. We did multiple things, but it was a little bit more niche. Part of the reason I wanted to come to Salesforce was because I wanted to sell multi-cloud, multi-solution products and a platform and see how that all plays together. And I think from my perspective, what I've learned is you need to have a certain level of depth of everything to have continuity with your customer and to gain trust with them. So for example, at Salesforce, what I've done since I've come into the manufacturing vertical, I've broken down our product set into scores 1 to 5. 1 to 5 is like, I don't know anything. Number 5 is I'm an expert. But number 2 is I know the value proposition. And my expectation of everybody on my team and what I'm trying to set for our manufacturing vertical as well is that everyone can speak to the value proposition of every product within the Salesforce tech stack. And you talk about going above and beyond. It is very hard. It is very hard to know everything about these products. And they're growing, they're evolving. You have a massive platform. I mean, Salesforce has to have at least 24 products at this point, right? SAP might even be double or triple that at this point. But the SE can't know everything, right? And this kind of goes back to the range conversation about generalists and specialists. For Salesforce, we have teams that are specialists. And so if we need to go deeper into those roles, we can. But our SEs need to know enough. And I think as an SE, you need to have a level of depth to be dangerous, to resonate with your customers, gain continuity, and be able to move the forward at all times. And I think that goes back to the 2% factor, right? Constantly learning, constantly growing. Products are always evolving. Platforms are always evolving. Your customers are always evolving. And so there's always something to learn. And actually, one of the things that was told to me when I joined Salesforce was, hey, look, there's so much product out there. You're never going to know as much as everybody. But every time we come out with a new product or a new release, that is your opportunity to be on an even playing field. And I really like that approach from my management perspective. And I really appreciate that from a team perspective. And it's hard. Sales continues to get hard. Platforms are hard. But to me, you have to, again, have that value proposition at all times for everything. And if you have that, you can build enough trust and have enough credibility to stand in a room with the C-level individual and talk about that from a product perspective.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think what you just said, right, having enough depth to be dangerous, I think that is, that is a dynamic scale, right? Because maybe you have a company with 50 products in the portfolio, maybe you have a company with 100 products, and depending on how broad it is, you go as deep as you need to be, so to say, dangerous enough, as you put it, right? So on the other hand, what you don't want to happen if you go into a sales meeting, I don't know, maybe like a morning workshop, 3-hour meeting and so on, you bring 10 of your colleagues with, right? And then everyone gets like 15 minutes. That's also a situation you want to avoid, right? So I think the challenge is really to find that depth so you can cover these type of things still in an elegant manner.
And I mean, what you said, Tim, I think, and James, you mentioned it, you always said value prop, right? So I think it's also where to focus, right? Are we saying, oh yeah, we have that broad and potentially very beneficial portfolio as a company, and we're always talking about our functionality or great products, or do we really figured out what the value is we can bring to an industry, to a customer, to the people we are talking to, and talking about that stuff? I think that already makes a huge difference, especially for the pre-sales role, because focusing on product and solution would always means people would ask you to do a demo, right? In the other case, people would ask you to, hey, let's have a valuable discussion with whatever, a customer in the insurance industry or whatever it will be. And it will not be about technology. It will about how can we benefit your business, Mr. Customer. And I already believe that makes a big difference.
I think it does too. And you guys both bring up really good points. I think one of the things that I stress to my team is it's not what you want, it's what the customer wants. There's so many times that we are just like, we get happy years. We hear like, oh, it's, for Salesforce, it's the Service Cloud or it's the Marketing Cloud. So we need to go and get a demo and do this and do that. When in reality, maybe you only need a conversation. They only need something high level. And again, that kind of goes back to our common theme. But you guys are exactly right. Like, it's not always what we think, what we want to do, but what the customer needs in that situation. And maybe it is only the value prop. Maybe it is only a small conversation on change management. It's not a demo. It's not a workshop. And I think you need to step back and understand, like, how does this actually move the deal forward and solve the customer's pains or business challenges? And that is how you should change and alter your approach forward.
So we're coming back to the earlier point, pre-sales. It's all about demo. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, no.
Maybe we can agree on it's also about demo.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, in some respect, definitely.
Right.
All right. So, I mean, James, I need to say I really, really enjoy that conversation. But there's a final question for you. And I guess you will have a great answer on that one. So, from your side, from your perspective, what are your top suggestions for sales engineers who would like to develop their careers further?
Well, I want to say thanks for having me on so far. This has been a lot of fun. We probably can talk for a couple more hours if our schedules allowed for it. And this has been a great perspective, and I appreciate you guys having me on and having Presales Collective on. And I think when I wrap with what are my 3 suggestions, the first one is figuring out what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. There are so many people who say, forget your strengths, focus on your weaknesses, or double down on your strengths. The right answer potentially is just understand them, right? All you need to do is understand what they are. Don't be afraid of feedback. Get that feedback. That's number 1. Number 2 is very near and dear to me and talks about my journey, is finding a mentor. You need to learn. Famous basketball coach at UCLA, John Wooden, back from the 70s, said, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And, you're always got to be learning, constantly growing, find a mentor, bounce ideas off. It's very important, number 2. And number 3 is find your North Star. Like, what are you striving for? What are you trying to achieve? Where are you trying to go? Don't let, status quo get in your way. Don't let societal pressures tell you what your next step is. Like, what are you really trying to do? And how does it fall into your strengths and your weaknesses? And what do maybe your mentors have to say? And so I would say those are my big 3. And I hope people can, reframe their perspective using those 3.
Yeah. Awesome insight. And maybe one extra question to your first point. You said, okay, figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. So when when you said that, I was immediately thinking of, and maybe you both know it, I know Jan does, I was thinking of 16personalities.com. I don't know if you know that, James.
I make all of my employees do that on their first week in the job.
Yes. There you go. I mean, that is one area that I used to learn about my own strengths and weaknesses. Turns out that I am an architect. I don't know what you are, James. But so my question would be, okay, how do you find that out, right? So obviously you've already confirmed, okay, 16 personalities, maybe one area to go. You talked about getting feedback from people in your environment. I still find it difficult to get really good and honest feedback. Any more tactical tips on how to achieve that come to mind?
Feedback is probably one of the top 5 toughest things to do and to get, right? Like, number one, you have to have a mindset to be open to feedback. And I've had these conversations with people throughout my career, is like, we can't just create a culture of feedback. You have to train a culture of feedback. And I think number one is being human, right? You have to be human and explain why you're trying to get feedback, good, bad, or ugly. And you also have to explain the why. If you tell people like, hey, I'm really trying to develop, I'm trying to be better, be vulnerable, explain what you're trying to do and why you're trying to accomplish, people are more willing to, help out. And it does take time. Feedback doesn't come overnight. There's not many people like myself who I don't even know if I know you. If you ask me for feedback, I'm going to give you my honest perspective, right? Like, that is something that I think that I've been able to do, and I appreciate, and I hope people appreciate it at the end of the day, because it comes with good intention. If you have good intention behind all of that at the end of the day, it helps. But again, I don't know if there's a secret sauce, unfortunately, but it comes with time, it comes with intention, and it comes with the why behind everything.
I think what you said is crucial to that topic, because to me it has also something to do with mindset and culture. We all know the feedback culture, like, how do you think we did today? Oh, well done.
That is the worst, right? It's like, we did great. It's like, okay, what can I action? I'll tell you, there's so many times in my life where it's been like, someone's like, oh, you did great, or your SE did amazing. And then they pull me aside and they complain about everything. My entire career, my first thing is, did you tell that person? And if you did not tell that person, I'm not going to tell that person, unless there's something that's like deep rooted that maybe I should handle. But most times you need to have that conversation, and I will help coach you through that conversation. I've had dozens of conversations with people not on my team, account executives, sales leaders, other SEs, on how to coach to give feedback, because it is important when you hear it from first person, because people are more receptive than kind of hearing it through the grapevine. Like, nobody wants that. And you guys are right. Like, great demo. Like, there's always room to improve. There is always room to improve. And I will double down on that, no matter what position you are in your entire life.
Yeah, it's 100%. You can always learn, and that's why I said I think it. To me, it has a lot to do with culture and mindset, right? And if it's not there, you need to create it. If you would like to go into that direction, then I agree with you. So giving it a good reason, right? The why, collaborate on it, make it clear. What does it mean? Why we are doing it? I think is crucial. Even if you go into organizations where it was not common sense before, right? Because they could get it the wrong way potentially. More like, they're looking at me, they're giving me a rating or whatever it is. But as you said, the intention from people like you is basically, hey, I would like to give back. I would like to help these guys to do better the next time. Okie dokie. I like that a lot. So while Tim was talking to you, I wrote a little conclusion to today's episode very spontaneously. So what I got, to summarize a little bit for the audience, is customer centricity is essential. If you would like to learn it, go to Hawaii, work in a hotel for a little while. You will know what it is, right? So you build these communities for a reason, right? And you build it for the people with that pre-sales profession. Sharing is caring, right? I heard collaboration is key. So get in touch with each other and communicate, and find people who are willing to mentoring you, and that is a good way to improve, right? I mean, your kind of goal and vision is to develop that community piece over the next couple of years, hopefully a lot of years, and drive that profession on a global level, you need to have focus. You need to be willing to learn all the time and then adopt your learnings to your daily business. By the way, learning never ends, right? So stay curious and always challenge yourself, right? All the time to keep quality high and your customer happy, which closes the loop to customer centricity. And guys, if you would like to add anything to the summary, feel free to do so.
I just have to say I'm impressed how quickly you pulled that off. Very nice, Jan.
Very impressive. Very impressive. I have nothing further to say. Surprise. So great recap.
Thanks. So, and I think that's the point to say is thank you, right? Again, James, to you. Great having you on the podcast. I really enjoyed that conversation. It was quite fun. And finally tell us, right? So where should people go to learn more about Presales Collective or to get in touch with you?
Yeah, and thank you guys both. It's been awesome getting to know you. It's been a pleasure. It's nice to see you guys executing at a high level and committed to the profession as well. It's really great. If you want more information, you can go to presalescollective.com. I would say sign up for an account, introduce yourself on our Slack, sign up for a webinar, read some of the articles. You can also check out our podcast, Presales Podcast, and also follow us on LinkedIn. Presales Collective is the name. Give us a follow. There's also a hashtag Presales Collective that many people are following as well. So would love to have you, engaging, at least following along in the community. So definitely appreciate the community rallying behind the collective.
We will put all that stuff into the show notes for sure, so nobody will miss it.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. And then also a thank you from my side, James. Thanks for joining us here. Thanks for sharing your insight and experiences. And thank you for founding this community, because I think also Jan and myself, we really appreciate what you're doing there. And with that being said, dear listeners, also a thank you to you. If you've been staying on the line until here, we hope you enjoyed this particular episode and you could learn something. If you like, and if you don't do it yet, please also follow us on LinkedIn. Also, the link for that will be in the show notes. And with that, from my side, thanks again to everyone and speak to you next time.
Thank you so much and bye-bye.